Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to be here to talk to you about how sports fashion and apparel retailers can leverage RFID source tagged items, helping to unlock omni-channel operations and align your customers' online and in-store shopping experience. So I'm going to introduce you to our presenters today. I'm Victoria Angel from Zebra and I'm your host, and we'll be covering some housekeeping shortly. We have Madalynn Lauria from Nedap's retail division based out of Boston, and Mark Thomson, our retail and hospitality expert at Zebra based in the UK. So in terms of housekeeping, the presentation will run for around 30 minutes and there will be time at the end to answer your questions. So please enter your questions into the question box during the presentation and we'll go through the Q&A at the end. If you would like further information from Nedap and Zebra and a copy of our RFID how-to guide, please select yes when the poll question is asked at the end of the webinar. We'll be recording this session so it can be available on demand for those who couldn't join us live today. So what we're going to cover in today's webinar, we'll explore specific omni-channel and market trends in light of today's current situation, real-life examples of RFID and multi-brand sports fashion and apparel retail, the benefits of RFID, and of course, how to get started. So now I'll turn you over to Mark Thomson. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Vicky, and we'll spend a couple of seconds just talking about, I guess, an introduction to the two businesses. So from a Zebra point of view, if you don't already know Zebra particularly well, for over 50 years, Zebra has delivered technology solutions that address the needs of those people, what we call at the front line, so at the edge. We're constantly finding new ways to connect people, products and assets to help businesses improve what we would call their performance edge. RFID is one of those areas of technologies, and we have a wide range of solutions from active to passive, from printers to labels, to mobile and fixed readers. So, and particularly in RFID and passive RFID, we work very closely with industry-leading partners, one of which is Nedap Retail. Madalynn, tell us a bit about Nedap.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So at Nedap, we are the global leader in RFID-based retail solutions. So we have a loss prevention side of the business as well as inventory management. So I'm on the stock management or inventory management team. Our solution suite is called ID Cloud. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I have a particular focus and interest in sports fashion retailers myself, with some experience that I hope to share with you guys and really teach you or discuss how we can build a business case on source tag labels. So back to you, Mark, until then.
Fantastic, thanks, Madalynn. So let's go to the next slide, please. So the structure really of today's session, as you've already seen, is we're going to start from the wider picture, the trends in overall retail. What are we seeing? What are the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic? And how are we seeing retailers, particularly in fashion retail, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic? And then I'll hand over to Madalynn and she'll talk about very much sports fashion retail and narrow down into how RFID could well be the enabling solution that allows sports fashion retailers to come out very healthily indeed. So that's the structure. Let's go straight into it. So before we'd even heard of COVID-19, retail, I'm sure you're aware, has always gone through change, and certainly over the last 25 years, a lot of that change has been affected by digital disruption. And we know retailers who don't adapt to change will fail. And we've already seen examples of that over the various years. And if we look back at, I guess, the video industry, we can all remember and relate to Blockbuster video rental, a worldwide business that failed to adapt to a new way that people were watching movies. And technology continues to disrupt retail and all sectors as it impacts the expectations of shoppers. So everyone is shopping differently now, and what we believe are the technologies in the latest disruptive digital wave will be automation, analytics, and artificial intelligence. A lot of that founded upon data and how data is used in the business to understand people, products, and places. Next slide, please. So COVID, we believe, is not a change in itself, but we believe it's a catalyst for change. So, and if we look at COVID as a catalyst for change, then what we need to focus on is those changes themselves and how they are going to be impacted by that catalyst of COVID. Looking at the apparel sector specifically, we were already seeing a significant shift to online, which is forcing retailers to address how they meet that challenge, how they fulfill orders, how they take returns, and also who their competition is, because no longer are simply the stores in the same town competition, but now they are national or even international retailers. Many of them even new to the industry and becoming visible because of online channels and fulfilled through low-cost courier services. Promotions and sales have become very frequent, so almost too frequent, and very, very rarely are people buying items at full price, but retailers are using promotions and sales to turn stock faster and and finding new ways of reaching out to customers and solving customers, I guess, the need to convert business by using what we might call try before you buy type solutions, Amazon Prime Wardrobe, Stitch Fix, etc., in order to get products in the hands of customers and convert those into purchases. And in the midst of this, the costs of running retail businesses have been increasing faster than the revenues from retail businesses. So with wage increases and other input costs, putting margins under pressure. All of this, as we know, has been causing a lot of retailers to address the fact of, should we actually even have physical stores, or should we change our store estate in some way? So stores, of course, will remain important, and a vast majority of retail sales still happen in stores, but the growth element of retail certainly seems to be focused around the online piece. And because we know stores will remain important, we do realize they have to change to match shopper expectations. And even according to the latest Zebra shopper study, those expectations are primarily based upon the availability of stock, the range of items, and the perception of price. Customers leave the store dissatisfied because, generally speaking, the number one reason is they didn't find the product they were looking for. So that's absolutely critical. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at here on the chart is, I guess, a view of the growth rates in retail, and you can see immediately the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic across different sectors. Let's focus in on the red line, and that is the fashion and apparel sector. Now, obviously, this year it's taken a big dip, mainly caused by the fact that the actual physical stores were closed. And only a certain proportion of that business shifted into those retailers' online channels, partly because of the capacity of those channels, their ability to fulfill from their existing warehouses or store stock, how do you get products back, etc. So a lot of challenges in terms of the logistics once you close your store estate. But the nice thing about this line, as you can see, next year, there is a clear recovery in this sector, and the ongoing trend is that the fashion and apparel sector will continue in terms of physical stores to grow between 3 and 4% per annum. Now, if we add that to the black line at the top, which is the e-commerce piece, that is showing obviously a great big spike this year as it became the preeminent channel during lockdown across the world. But even after this year into next year and beyond, we see elevated growth rates still continue in e-commerce, and therefore the opportunity for fashion in particular, when we add the physical stores and the e-commerce piece, is still very, very positive. Next slide, please. So I think it's clear around the world, and it's a common term, but during the pandemic we learned a new phrase, and that was non-essential retail, and that included hospitality and of course fashion. And those sectors were hit particularly hard. Many of them had to shut completely. Coffee shops, if they were allowed to open, were only allowed to open on takeaway basis. And most brick and mortar fashion stores were closed completely for a significant period of time. Those who were able ramped up their online businesses, but as I said before, many couldn't ramp it up enough to meet the significant demand. So some websites even had to close, and there were some notable leading fashion retailers that did that for a short while they changed their capacity and their processes. And those without online presence, such as big name Primark, were hit very hard, leaving a lot of stock sitting in warehouses and stores. As the fashion and apparel sector starts to reopen globally, stores are having to implement distancing rules, facing reduced number of shoppers. And the result here is that it becomes even more important to make sure that we turn that footfall into actual sales, that we have the right stock, that we display it correctly, and that we're able to let shoppers know exactly what we have. So making sure those offers are absolutely right and personalized, and the engagement with shoppers is correct in store. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. Just a little technical delay. So as we see, the sector is recovering and will continue to recover, and there are great opportunities out there. But there are challenges. Many retailers are being left with excess stock. So where do you keep that stock? Do you try and sell it through with promotions in store? Do you find warehouses? If you do, which stock can you bring back from those warehouses, and at what time, and how do you access and identify that stock quickly? Those are challenges. We even see some challenges or some opportunities being addressed by pop-up outlet stores, even from the high-end retailers, and Harrods of London is one of those that's taking advantage of pop-up outlets. Many apparel retailers will also look to shorten the supply chains to reduce that longer-term risk. And so they're able to react faster if there's a further spike or a new pandemic that ever comes onto the horizon. Stock visibility will inevitably be in more focus now than ever before, and that means that retailers will have to start thinking about one view of stock across both the retail stores but also the DCs, and be able to fulfill from both DCs, fulfillment centers, and stores. So there is one way of fulfilling, and you fulfill from the best place possible for those customers to meet their demands, whether that's a demand for a click and collect offer, for a home delivery offer, etc. Now, we can also see that other technologies, or technologies such as RFID, but link them to technologies like augmented reality, can also combine together, not only to improve the shopper experience, but also reduce the number of clothes tried on. So looking at creative ways of managing maybe virtual fitting rooms, or maybe trying one item on and then seeing it in a magic mirror in various different colors. So using the technologies that are already in place to enhance the shopper experience. Next slide, please. Now, what's, I guess, worrying for physical retailers is when we see headlines like a recent one in Retail Gazette saying that 20% of shoppers say they'll never shop in brick and mortar stores again. That is particularly worrying. So it's critical that we ensure that stores can make the experience the right experience for shoppers, make that a good experience. So shoppers, obviously, as we said before, they want to go into the store, they want to find the products that they're looking for in the sizes. Now, very often retailers have those products in the right sizes, but they may not be on display, or they're not easy to find, or they're back of store, etc. So finding those quickly, replenishing those to front of store quickly, absolutely critical. And one of those sectors where we believe there are great opportunities is the sports fashion sector. Perhaps one that has a great need for change because, of course, the younger demographic that shops in sports fashion stores, but also one of the greatest opportunities to adapt and take advantage of technology because the sports brands that they sell are already adapting and adopting new technologies in terms of the way they manufacture and distribute their products. Now, I'm not an expert here, so I'm going to hand over at this point to Madalynn to dig deeper into sports fashion and exactly what trends are happening and how RFID in particular can help them leverage some opportunities.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for setting the stage there. I think that we learned a little bit about some of the trends that are coming out or shaped by our current situation. But I want to also focus on some of the positive and trends that we see in sports fashion. So with that, I think it's important to emphasize the competitive landscape here. So all retail is competitive, we know that, but sports fashion is even more fierce. It is their particular strategy to place competitive stores right next to each other. So you know what that means, right? If you don't have the product that a customer wants, they're going to leave your store and go right next door. And if they're able to have a successful shopping trip, well, then they're giving your competitor business, and that might be for the long term. So that's why we see that there is an accelerated growth of omnichannel and being able to offer premium services to customers, particularly in the sports fashion world. Next slide, please. So we do see that there is a digital gap, and some retailers are doing omnichannel very successfully, and some are starting to implement it without the right foundation in place. So it's difficult to make the same products both digitally and physically available in the customer's hands and hours. So that's why we see that some retailers are fulfilling from their distribution center, which may result in longer wait times. So it's important to think about your store stock as almost a mini distribution center. You can really tap into that inventory and fulfill more of the customer's needs with stock that you already have on hand, very local to them. Next. So if you don't believe me on this adoption of omnichannel, especially being higher in sports fashion retailers, here's two examples that I found with a really quick search online. So we see that with JD, they're offering unlimited shipping for a year. So this is similar to Amazon. This is kind of like a subscription service. Sign up for it and you have next day delivery free for the year. And then if we click also again, we can see another example from Decathlon. They're actually able to offer 2-hour pickup on items in stores. So as a consumer, I think this is a great option, especially during the wake of COVID-19. I want to go shopping. I don't want to risk my health. I also want my products quickly. So this kind of solves that problem. You can go online, shop for what you're looking for, and know that you can go right to the store and pick it up immediately. Next. And when we're talking about digital connectivity, another trend that we see is the rise of the digital marketplace, as we call it. So we see that there's a huge benefit for retailers to gain that one single view of their stock all the way from source to store. But the new potential we're also seeing is in multi-brand retailers to be able to tap into your brands or vice versa and understand exactly where your products live. Well, you're just making your products more available for the customer and ensuring that you're not missing that sale. Next. So some major brands that we see buying into RFID, I mean, we see that they are adopting this technology and seeing the value. Brands like Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour, they're adopting a global source tagging strategy, which means if you're a multi-brand sports retailer, then you're receiving gold into your store. So we're going to talk more about what we mean when we say you have gold in your store. But we want to talk about how we can tap into this gold and help you to build a business case based on an investment that's already existing in store. So RFID is a powerful technology. There's many different ways you can use it, but I think it's important to have some focus. And so for this presentation, I just want to focus on a few use cases that are particularly relevant in the sports fashion world. The first one being cycle counting. So if you're familiar with RFID, you've definitely heard the term cycle counting. So no surprise, this is the first use case we're talking about. But at Nedap, we believe that counting is the primary and foundational function of building a business case, as well as being able to support your omnichannel initiatives. So on average, in some of the projects I've worked on, we see that sports fashion retail is anywhere from 70 to 85% accurate. It's typically a little bit higher than fashion apparel retail because they have more textiles. We see that shoes are typically more accurate, but still that means that there is a huge opportunity to increase your accuracy with RFID. And we say that we can get that up to around 98%. So what can you do when you fully understand how accurate your stock is? Well, next slide. We can make sure that we're never missing that sale. So as I mentioned, shoes are more accurate on average. So apparel sales is where you can see a big opportunity. And with refill or similar functions where you're replenishing from your stockroom to your sales floor, you're tapping into a missed opportunity. If a customer walks in, they're only 50% likely to actually ask you for a product if they don't see it. Otherwise, they may leave. So if you have items in your stockroom that are not displayed on your sales floor, the sooner you can see that, the sooner you are able to get that sale and also, make sure that your inventory is fully displayed. Next. We also see display compliance as being particularly important with sports fashion retailers that may have more styles than they can display on their wall. Well, then you have a decision to make. How are you going to fill this wall? What are the best products? And typically store managers know their customers and they're able to do this, but is it done regularly and how can you keep up with it? With RFID, we can get these data-driven insights and not depend so much on your store staff, but make sure that you're displaying the products that maybe are doing the best in that geographic region, have the best sales, and you also want to make sure you're displaying products that you have a full size one for in case the customer asks you for it. So this is something that we co-developed with sports fashion retailers to just enhance their process in the store and enable their managers to have a tool that allows them to also sell more. So we've seen that that's been widely adopted. And lastly, one other functionality I'll mention is search. This is not new to RFID, being able to locate a chip and be able to find it with what we call kind of a Geiger functionality, where you get haptic feedback as well as sounds as you get closer to the product. I think for me, I worked on a project with sports fashion retailer and I didn't introduce this functionality because there's not a huge business case for it. But what I did find is that without even showing it to them, they started using it on day one. And the biggest benefit they felt was they were tapping into that last pair always. They could locate it where you might ask a customer to wait a few minutes and come back empty-handed. Well, now they had the tool in their hands to say, I know that this product is in my store. I will go find it and bring it back to you, furthering that plan to never miss the sale. So next, I want to just talk a bit about what RFID can bring to my business. So these are some functionalities that we see being adopted in sports fashion. But I also want to talk about what does it mean for you? And at headquarters level, what can you then bring to your executives to get buy-in on this technology? I think the first biggest thing that you can benefit from, on the next slide, is achieving your total stock visibility. So this is across multiple channels. We want to lay that foundation so that you can route and orchestrate customer orders wherever they come from and wherever they need to go. So again, being ready to sell across all different sales channels and lay that foundation for a successful omnichannel strategy. And on the next slide, we're also talking about replenishment. So I briefly talked about the back of house, your stockroom to your sales floor replenishment, but there's also from your distribution center to your stores. So RFID can also help in this area to make sure that once you're running low on an item, whatever your target threshold may be, that we are automatically replenishing that item and sending it straight to the store. So you're never out of a product. And at the headquarters level, you get a full view of this. But we want to make stock physically available. We also want to make it digitally available. So here I used a little example, and we've been speaking about this more in the realm of omnichannel as well. You want to make sure that you have the product available for customers. So we typically will put in safety stock thresholds to ensure that that product is there and we don't have to cancel an order. But if you're very confident in your stock and you're at 98% accuracy, you can lower your safety stock thresholds down to 0 or even 1 and be able to ensure that you're always fulfilling that order. So in this example here, our safety stock threshold is at 2. That means that online, I will not be able to sell any extra larges or extra smalls. Well, if I were able to minimize that down to one, sell down to that last pair, you're getting more full price sell through, and you're also tapping into more inventory for customers to reserve online. And on the next slide, we talked a lot about these major brands that are source tagging. We coined the phrase that they're sitting on golds, but the reason that we're considering it golds is that these labels are existing in your store today. They're active, they're ready to be used, and can begin building your business case immediately. And it's also important to note that all these brands that are mentioned were encoded by GS1 standards. So your RFID solution should also ideally follow these standards to allow you some more flexibility in the market. So it's really simple and easy to get started, even with just these 3 brands, on building your business case. It's important to understand what percentage of your stock these brands make up when determining how large your business case could be. But I think what I'd like to get into lastly is how can you get started? What do we recommend to tap into this gold almost immediately? So on the next slide, my best advice would be to start simple. RFID is an exciting and sexy technology, but don't become distracted by all the possibilities of RFID. Build a long-term plan that will help you to achieve these ambitions. Choose a partner accordingly. And at least the first phase, start by implementing a solution that will give you the biggest benefit at the lowest complexity. We actually call that the 80-20 rule. So you're achieving 80% of the benefit of RFID at only 20% of the complexity on day one. So your investment is already in the stores. You already have source tagged labels. Maybe you don't want to add more labor and tag the rest of your items. That's okay. We can build the business case just on those labels that exist without having to add additional hardware, such as printers or tagging parties, at least in a phase 1. And then it's simple. Start cycle counting weekly. That's going to improve your accuracy and availability. And then we're able to prove that ROI even faster. So I think that's really the message that I wanted to send to you guys from this webinar, is that it is simple to get started. You can choose a partner that can get up and running in a matter of days and be building your ROI in 1 to 2 months. So with that, Vicky, I will hand it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Madalynn. Thank you, Mark. So we're open to questions now. Please enter your question into the question panel, and they will come through, and I can ask Madalynn and Mark. Also, we're going to run a survey quickly. So if you would like further information from Nedap or Zebra and a copy of the RFID how-to ebook, please select yes. So questions. I have the first question from George, and will we have a copy of these slides sent out? So yes, there will be a on-demand version of this webinar available. So that will be sent out automatically after the webinar is finished. So the next question is from George. We have a multi-brand customer ready to use RFID. How can we start A to Z? We will need help with our first installation and are willing to invest in demo materials and training. Do you have a full package as a demo?
Yeah, so I think,
Nedap.
yeah. Mark, would you like to start? And I'll take it from software.
I think certainly, yeah, it's very easy to get started, as Madalynn was saying. I think the key thing is, first of all, to understand what we're trying to achieve, the main KPIs. Look for those simple KPIs first, and then talk to Nedap and to your Zebra representative, because choosing the right tools to get it started, the right readers to make for your particular environment is absolutely key. And I guess from a demo point of view on the software side, Madalynn?
Yeah, so on a demo perspective, but also just kind of getting started, I think it's important to note what you will need. At a minimum, we need a mobile device and an RFID reader. Those two will connect via Bluetooth. And then you just download the software. And that's really all we need to get started. That is also how we conduct our demos. Our app is available in the App Store. So if that's something that you're interested in, we could definitely discuss. But again, as long as you are getting that hardware and software in place, you really are ready to get up and running in a short period of time.
Perfect, thank you. So Joseph has asked a question. Fashion brands like Adidas and Nike have been mentioned. Are those manufacturers adopting RFID solutions within distribution centers, warehouses of theirs? It could be a very nice strategic icebreaker for retailers. So who would like to pick that up, Madalynn or Mark?
Yeah, so I can start. So I think, thanks for the suggestion. I agree. I think that is a good icebreaker, and that's how we are starting a lot of our discussions, because the value of RFID is being able to understand from source all the way to store exactly what's going on throughout the entire supply chain. So in some of those brands that we talked about, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, they are looking at RFID in their warehouses and in their factories. So I think we first focus on starting in the store, where we see the biggest benefit, where you can get the ROI the fastest. Then we work our way back through the supply chain, because then we can add additional benefits once our stores are a little less chaotic and more accurate.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Mark? We're getting quite a few questions coming through now, so keep your questions coming in.
No, I think those brands are absolutely putting or utilizing RFID from source because there are benefits for them through the supply chains, but they realize that there are also benefits, and of course in their own stores, because a lot of those brands have their own retail outlets, but they are realizing there are also benefits for their retail customers in terms of how they manage stock, how they get visibility, and that helps the overall flow of the supply chain and the data that surrounds it.
Perfect, thank you. So we have a question from Stuart. When it comes to footwear, do you think it's better to RFID tag the box or the shoe?
That's definitely for Madalynn, that one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the projects that I've worked on, we typically tag the box. Of course, the source tag label is already on the box. We have seen other brands that have chosen to tag in the sole of the shoe. I think there's some implications on that, and I think it's also important that as an industry, we kind of find a standard that works. This way we can have more plug-and-play solutions. But in examples like functionality such as display compliance, it's important to know what's on the wall and also what's in the back of house. So in that scenario, you would tag both. So I think it depends on what you're hoping to prove and where it's easiest for you to start, but either are an option.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I think you have to look at what you're trying to, what the business case is, and if you're looking at that merchandising compliance, that fit to trade type approach to the store, then obviously it has to be on the product itself, not on the box. But there's no reason why it couldn't be on both.
Perfect, thank you. So Ariane has asked, which brands are currently source tagging or plan to source tag their products in the near future?
Yeah, so I think we touched on that in the presentation, Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour being the top ones that we see in the market. Of course, we see Adidas is taking a US first approach, but they do have a global strategy. So I think that we see that popping up in different markets, but I think those are the main brands. And in most multi-brand environments, that typically makes up anywhere from 50 to 60% of the store. So I think that also is where the biggest opportunity is right now.
Thank you. So I have a question from Martin. Do you support multiple GTINs per SKU?
Yeah, so assuming that one's for me. I would definitely want to know a little bit more about what you mean as far as multiple GTINs or what you're hoping to achieve with that. But there is a mapping mechanism and that we could discuss. So we have seen that some brands have different vendor ID codes or different SKUs in their internal organization. Of course, it's no one size fits all, but that's something that we would need to explore on a one-to-one basis.
Thank you. So I have a request from George for contact. So as I said, if you have requested for Zebra and Nedap to to provide you with more information, then we will absolutely be in touch. So we will be in touch afterwards, George. The next question is from Mike. How would you manage a mixed environment with source tagged and non-tagged products? Would this not make the store operations more complex? 2 processes, one with RFID and one without?
Yeah, great question. And I think in, 6 months ago when brands were starting to source tag, there was still a lot of legacy stock in stores. So this was definitely something that we were able to combat with some of our partners. So we do have a solution for that. You can manage a mixed environment and still potentially not need to tag unnecessary items. Of course, you can choose to tag in stores on all other items that don't have source tags, but we want to, of course, decrease those labor hours. So there are options here.
Fantastic. Do you have anything to add, Mark, or should I move on to the next question?
Yeah, let's move on to the next question.
Okay, so this is from Pavel. You have mentioned 98% stock accuracy, but 2% is still quite a big difference. What factors cause the errors, and is it feasible to achieve 100% accuracy?
Wow.
Yeah, thanks, Pavel.
That's a great challenge.
That's a power question. I love it. But yeah, we actually have a few of our customers that are achieving 100% accuracy on a regular basis. I think the reason that we say 98% and that there is a 2% difference is because we're saying count once a week. Of course, you could count every day and that'll get your accuracy to 100%. But we see that 2% doesn't make or break a business case. We do have retailers that count twice a week, but we see that, again, to get the 80% benefit for 20% of the complexity, once a week is fine.
And I was, just to add to that, one of our French customers using RFID has challenged all of their stores. So as Madalynn says, it's a lot to do with how often and how well you do the counts, the reads. And so they've challenged each of their stores and they get visibility about the accuracy from each of their stores. So they've almost created a competition for each store to try and beat other stores and get as close to 100% as possible. So it's to an extent, it's in the hands of the process rather than the technology at that point.
Absolutely. And I think just one thing to add to that too, one limiting factor in regards to accuracy can also be shielding. So I think most people here are familiar with the need for physical shielding between your stockroom and your sales floor. And if you're misallocating items or getting bleed through from different, what we call sublocations, this can also impact your accuracy. So we have come up with virtual shielding to eliminate this and also be a little bit more accurate than physical shielding alone. So if that's something that you're looking to get to 100% accuracy, definitely something to talk with your software provider about.
But I would add at this point that that search for 100% accuracy, so the search for perfection, if you like, should not blind us to the fact that when moving from traditional ways of counting stock, which are often in fashion retail, giving us between 60 and 70% accuracy, and now we're moving up to a fairly easy 98% accuracy, that's the real leap. Don't spend all your effort trying to get that extra 1 or 2%. Focus on the big wins.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madalynn. Thank you, Mark. So we have another couple of questions. This is from George. We will need someone to help us choose the right hardware, software we can develop.
George, it sounds like you definitely need a conversation with us afterwards, and we can help you through all of those factors, and we'd look forward to having that discussion.
Excellent, thank you. And keep your questions coming in. So I think we have a couple more minutes to pose questions to Madalynn and Mark. So thank you for everyone that has entered a question already. So this is from Martin. When do we reach the tipping point for using source tagged all the way? What major brands are on board?
So I think Madalynn, you covered some of the brands that were already on board. I think the tipping point is quite an interesting one because I guess cost becomes a factor, and then the question then I guess is at which point in the supply chain sees the benefits. And I think originally when I first started talking about RFID 20 odd years ago, everyone was talking about the real benefits of when you tag from source and read all the way from source all the way through the supply chain. But actually more recently, the real growth has been in the stores side from what we've seen in terms of omni-channel fulfillment. So I don't know if you now see it as a sort of pull through from stores and it's going back to the source, or if you still think it's from the source through to the stores.
Yeah, and I think that we pretty much are at that tipping point. I think that you have the opportunity in your stores to utilize source tagged items, and I would say that that's the tipping point. If we can build a business case with just existing labels, I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, and the costs have certainly come down over recent years of all aspects in terms of both hardware, labels, etc. And the understanding of the technology now is pretty widespread. So all of these factors are coming together. Link that to omnichannel fulfillment and using the stores as part of that omnichannel fulfillment. Those things are creating that tipping point, and which is why we've seen both in terms of sports fashion, but also in terms of general fashion, the major brands adopting RFID very widely.
Fantastic. So I have another question. How do you measure the ROI for RFID?
Yeah, great question. And I think it depends also on the business's initiatives and what they're hoping to achieve in that upcoming quarter. But typically the approach that we take is we focus on accuracy, which we say will lead then to an increase in product availability. And there's a metric that we use to measure and some data analytics behind that of product availability, which allows us to calculate a sales increase. So typically in these projects, we see anywhere from 2 to 7% sales increase. And that's what we focus on at Nedap. But we also build in some KPIs that may be retailer specific.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I think that accuracy of stock is to an extent is a financial measure in itself, and so you start to see some benefits there. The on-shelf availability inevitably leading to better customer conversions, so better sales, and then also the ability for retailers to fulfill their promises to customers. And Madalynn pointed out in her presentation, take Decathlon for example, there is no way they would be able to meet a 2-hour fulfillment for click and collect without the use of technology like RFID. So it allows you to increase customer satisfaction levels, and that will inevitably increase loyalty and long-term sales.
Yeah, and I think a great example to think of is if you're doing your manual inventory counts once a year or maybe even twice a year, if you think you have 5 of this shirt in your store, but in reality you only have 1, well, as soon as you sell that item, you still think you have 3. So you're not going to replenish it immediately. You're also not going to sell it, and you might not even catch it until your next manual inventory. Well, with RFID, you're going to catch that next week, and you're going to be replenishing weeks before you may have with a manual inventory.
Yeah, and it helps you not to waste staff and customers' time. I mean, how often have we been in stores and been shopping when the sales assistant said, "Oh yeah, my system says I should have 2 of those left. Let me go and find one for you," and then comes back 5 minutes later, wasted time, couldn't find them. RFID cuts all of that out and saves time. And if we know we don't have it in stock, then they start to think about, okay, how can I save the sale? How can I take that order from the shop floor? So it increases sales, increases customer satisfaction, and reduces wasted sales time.
Perfect. So we still have questions coming through, but we've got 1 minute left. So if you could possibly speed answer this next one, that would be fantastic. So the last question that I've got is, how do you prevent other stores' inventory which has a vendor tag biasing the inventory data when picked up during a scan?
Great question. Yes. And I think that also falls into the strategy of retailers putting their competitive stores near each other. You're going to read labels through walls, and similar to virtual shielding, we do have a solution that helps to ensure that you are only reading the labels that exist in your store and not surrounding stores. and also check with your software providers to see if they have a solution for this as you're entering those engagements.
Yeah, nothing to add on that.
Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for attending today, and thank you to our presenters, Madalynn from Nedap and Mark from Zebra. Any questions that we didn't manage to get to, we will answer after the session. So thank you very much for attending, and unless you have any closing words, I will end the webinar.
No, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Zebra, as well.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.